everybody. So we got another episode of Jimmy Wolf or JWtalks, doing a little bit of a rebrand here. Got my man Jeff Dunbrack, just came back from
Good
Scotland.
evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, he's in love with Scotland. He should be. It's a beautiful place. So this is Jeff's idea. We're going to do our top 5 greatest hits records. Greatest hits albums have always been very important in bands' discographies. They a lot of times they're the band's best-selling records because all the hits are there, and it was a great way to sell all the hits in one package. For me, it was definitely a way to get into bands that had really intimidating discographies. So, as opposed to going out and buying like 12 records, original album records, you could just buy the greatest hits and kind of get a sampling of everything. That was my reason for getting the greatest hits records. But I usually like to collect everything that a band does. So for me, I prefer to do that. But yeah, there's a few discographies I just decided I would rather just have the greatest hits. But that's my take on greatest hits. Why don't you give your take, Jeff, and then you go first.
So I definitely agree with you, Jimmy. There's a lot of bands that where they have too many records of them. It's just you're not gonna wake up one day and go, you know what, today I'm gonna start collecting the Rolling Stones and start from square one and work your way to present day. So the greatest hits are where you need to start, and to be honest, that's how I've started with with the exception of my favorites that I kind of grew up with. The greatest hits is where you start, and then you decide whether you're going to branch off from that point. So I really do feel like they're an important catalyst into getting into a band. If you decide you're going to be a true fan or a casual fan at that.
That's true, yeah.
So extremely important, and great for the industry too, because you can sell some fans an album every 2 to 3 years, and then in between album cycles you can sell them another greatest hits album and hopefully bring more people along the way, and then continue the album cycle again from that point. So great for the industry, great for the fans, great for the band because they get more record sales just for doing nothing, pretty much. They just have to go have a couple meetings and decide what songs go on. So very important all the way around. There's a lot of different takes on greatest hits. You can have singles collections, or you can have a true greatest hits. Some bands don't release the greatest songs as singles. So there's also different takes to how greatest hits are assembled. And I think my selections are great. I kind of run the gamut with them. The ones that I've chosen are greatest hits all the way around, and truly encapsulate a band's career as a whole, and definitely do pick all the greatest songs. So, shall we?
Why don't you just do all 5? Just go for it.
Okay. In no particular order. Definitely I would say, again, in no particular order, one that I would like, one sec, get out of here, One I would like to mention first is the Cult's greatest hits.
Ooh, nice.
I think it's just called greatest hits. Okay. The Cult are a band that had, so I bought this in 1998. They had many albums from the early 80s up into the early 90s. They had a good decade worth of albums. I only really knew of 3 songs, Sanctuary being the biggest one. But I bought that greatest hits and I loved it. I mean, it was just awesome. It truly is So the Cult got off slow. I mean, their first album was called Dreamtime, and now that I'm a fan of the band and own all their music, I didn't really like, nor did I know of that the Cult being that early. So there's a couple songs from that one on there. Sanctuary, obviously, where it really gets going for me. But Revolution and Rain are also from that album. I would say that greatest hits is more of a singles collection. Actually, I think it's called Pure Cult: The Singles, 1983 to 99 or something. But
Yeah,
anyways,
gotta hear you.
true greatest hits. The Cult were a band that didn't really mess around. They definitely put their greatest hits front and center on singles and released them to the public and wanted them on the radio. Um, it's also very long. I think it's 19 songs long. So you're really getting a good bang for your buck there. Uh, in terms of, so Dreamtime, Love, Electric, Sonic Temple. Um, there was one more from 91, Ceremony, and the self-titled album. They had 6 albums, which they pulled songs from. They also chose a good amount of songs from each of those albums. There was a song that they did called The Witch from the Cool World soundtrack that they threw on there too. Definitely deserves to have a place on that greatest hits. It is a fantastic song and deserves to be placed up there amongst their greatest hits. So that was a record that I truly, it took me a while to get into the Cult after buying that, but once I bought that greatest hits, it was in rotation for me for years. And then I finally decided I'm going to actually delve into their back catalog and get into it. So that was a great purchase for me and one that I'll always remember. In fact, that might have even been my first greatest hits package that I ever bought and kind of pushed me into, exploring a band's back catalog from that point on. Next one, again, no particular order, The Cure greatest hits. I chose this. Of course, I'm a massive Cure fan, but again, I found the Cure late in life, and these guys have a massive amount of albums. I mean, like they have, if not 15, something like that, more than 10, less than 20, but that is an awful lot of albums to get into. They also have different periods in their career, the very early gothy stuff, um, the experimental mid 80s. It was, the late 80s, early 90s when they really, I think I would say, hit their stride and found their sound. But that being said, too, The Cure also have a lot of, it was a time in the industry where people put out singles, and The Cure had a lot of their greatest hits that weren't even on an album. So I feel like that really, their greatest hits really, really is a well-rounded offering, which shows them at their best. Obviously, true fans were saying, "Oh, it's pretty shit. They're missing pictures of you, and it's missing this and the other." And I guess if to appease the true fans, you could have had a double album greatest hits, which probably would have been a bit more comprehensive. But again, long, and the Cure's greatest hits goes way back from "Boys Don't Cry" all the way up to the last album of the 90s, which was Wild Mood Swings, and it has a couple off there. It even has a new track on it, which was really good. So again, great offering, a true representation of a band as a whole, and also takes you through the various periods of the band's career. And again, I think the only thing that the true fans would say, I know that real Cure fans really, really love the early period of their career. And this album, The Greatest Hits, is a little weighted obviously towards the mid late 80s and 90s. It really kind of, there's nothing from Pornography on it, but as far as I was concerned, that was a great way for me to get into that band. And then I went back and found all their other albums, and from Pornography and Faith, I went right back to the beginning and got right into them. So the Cure greatest hits, phenomenal. Maybe a bit of a contentious choice here for me would be the best of both worlds, Van Halen.
Nice. Okay. Cool.
Again, a band with 10 albums, 2 singers, and greatest hits. So they Van Halen had a previous greatest hits before this. That was, I didn't own that one, but this one came out, and I thought, I do like Van Halen. I should probably get into that and see what that's all about. And it was very. They had 6 albums with David Lee Roth, 4 with Sammy Hagar. It was a great mix of both singers and their output with those singers. It was almost weighted about equally, even though there was more material with David Lee Roth to pull from. But again, man, did they ever cover all the Van Halen have some great songs that aren't on the radio and they weren't released as singles, but if you're talking something that's gonna just reel the fans, the casual listener probably in, that one really worked well for me because I found myself like all I really knew was the David Lee Roth era. I didn't really know much about the Sammy era, and I found I quite liked them both after buying that. Like the undercurrent of Eddie Van Halen through that both incarnations of that band is very strong. And truly, I'm a fan more of Eddie Van Halen than I am of David Lee Roth or Sammy Hagar. But therefore, both parts of both incarnations of that band are important to me. And I don't think, I do know one guy who actually prefers the Sammy era, actually, a guy I work with. But I would say most people, for sure, the vast majority would say that it's David Lee Roth where it's at. But when you stack them up right side by side with each other, the Sammy era is quite good. A lot of really strong songs. The production is great. Sammy can belt it out just like Dave, and that was a greatest hits where they're trying to really sell you the band as a whole, not just one part of the band or one era. So that one, and also I have to point out that it had 3 new Sammy songs on it too, and I liked all 3 of them, which is rare. A lot of the times, I bought greatest hits packages in the past where it's the same songs that I've owned before, but there's one new song on this greatest hits, so you got to buy it. It's kind of a bit of a cash grab and a bit of a ripoff for the fans because the new song doesn't really hold the weight that the old material does. But they do it as a way, like basically, so that the true fan needs to own it, and your collection won't be complete unless they sell you the same 12 songs over again with one brand new one. But in this case with the Van Halen one, it really worked. I really liked those new Sammy Hagar songs, which was something that was very memorable to me. Next, I'm going to say, I'm not going to say that this is truly. I think I've done 3 so far, so I got 2 more to go. One that I'm going to just throw out there because I actually just recently bought it. Bush, of all groups. So I never really liked Bush in the 90s. To me, Gavin Rossdale was too handsome. It's almost like he was a supermodel that they just put a guitar in his hands and said, you're going to make these songs that sound like Nirvana. But over the years, I've heard his songs on the radio, and I've been like, nah, they're kind of good. I should, and I'm always like, yeah, maybe I'll get into them, or I'll pick up one of their albums. But anyways, I heard a snippet of something from Bush on the internet, and I was like, that's pretty good. It's about time I just go check that out, and I did. And Bush have actually, and again, knowing nothing about this band really before buying this greatest hits, besides like the songs that were on the radio in the 90s. Obviously, I remember them. I wasn't, I didn't love them, but um, I found like I learned that they have been releasing albums right steady through. Mind you, not terribly, they're not cranking out albums every 3 years anymore, but they're putting out albums still regularly every, I don't know, I'd say every 5 years. Maybe they have little gaps in their career. But anyways, I bought it and I quite liked it. And it's this is a band that I haven't delved into their back catalog. I only have the greatest hits, but I quite like it. And I like the new stuff, believe it or not. There's a song called "The Kingdom" that I think is really good, and "Letting the Cable Sleep" I find really good, and I like almost the new ones better than I like, Everything Zen and Little Things, and all the ones that were on the radio before. So that to me was a very pleasant surprise. Actually, I bought it right before Scotland, so that was something that I had that was new that I could listen to, and I had quite a bit of time while being on the bus traveling around Scotland, and so I had a lot of time to listen to music. And believe it or not, like that Bush was in heavy rotation for me. And there's one new song on the Bush greatest hits called um, "Nowhere to Go But Everywhere." I think I think it sounds awesome, and they did a cover of the Beatles "Come Together," which again, normally I'm a little hesitant of, for one, anybody but Oasis copying the Beatles or covering the Beatles, and two, "Come Together" has been done before many times. So, what can you bring to the table when you're going to cover "Come Together"? But that being said, I like their version. So there you go. Last but not least, I say the greatest hits for last. That would be Duran Duran. Um, Duran Duran have their greatest hits. I think it's just called Greatest. It came out in 1999. Um, they were around 20 years in at this point in time. A great time for a greatest hits. A good retrospective. This greatest hits I remember buying in 1999. It is, if not 19, it's 21 songs long. It is very long. Like they jam pack the amount of music into 70 minutes or 80 minutes or however. Like they put the most amount of music they possibly could on this CD. They go right back from planet Earth all the way up to present day. And at that point, they had just put out an album called Madazaland that, really, it wasn't flying out of record stores, let's just say. But, there was one song on it from Madazaland. It represented from the early Duran Duran days of, planet Earth and Rio, and, the pre-breakup into the mid to late 80s when, things were a little harder for them. They still sold records, but, they certainly weren't doing as well as they were in 83 and 89. And all the way up to their big comeback period of the Wedding album. But yeah, just like that truly was, there are absolutely no duds on that album. I mean, that is chock full of greatest hits, and all of the songs on them, I believe, were singles or were on the are things that they wanted to promote. But also, Duran Duran were always very good at, they put the best songs out first, and the record label, I think, always wanted them. Their singles were their strongest songs, and they didn't leave the great ones for track 9 on the album. The greatest songs were the singles, and so that for me was. And again, I didn't really get into the Duran Duran back catalog for a long time. From that point on, I started buying their new albums, but I never really bought the old ones until relatively recently, like maybe just a few years ago. And now I have every single album they have ever done, except for one, I think. And again, definitely a band um, that is that's worth getting into. And one more thing about Duran Duran is that they are an band that is very poppy. So I can understand how maybe you're not gonna want the average guy probably is not gonna want 12 Duran Duran albums in their collection, but everybody wants Hungry Like the Wolf. So truly, you buy one greatest hits, you got it all covered right there. You got Ordinary World, you got Hungry Like the Wolf, Planet Earth, Come Undone, Notorious. It really is a true Wild Boys. It has everything in one package, from 1980 all the way up to the 90s. So very, very well done greatest hits. That is my 5 right there. Again, not exactly the greatest hits, except for Duran Duran, which truly is the greatest of all the greatest hits. The other ones I just find to be really, really good. Jimmy, what's your take on things?
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you. I do own that Duran Duran Greatest Hits, and that's the only Duran Duran album that I have. And for me, that's good. That's good. I mean, yeah, they're a fantastic band. Okay, so for me, okay, I've got an order.
Okay.
So for me, number 1, or sorry, 5. My first is number 5. It's gonna be Bowie's greatest hits. So this is best of Bowie. So I mean Bowie. I mean I own some of his albums, but he's got 26 studio records, so it's a little bit intimidating at first. And he goes through a lot of different cycles and periods of styles. So this is just a much more tangible, bite size collection to get into.
Streamlined.
Yeah, and I mean it's really got everything, right? It's got Space Oddity, Changes, Suffragette City, Ziggy Stardust, Rebel Rebel, Young Americans, Fame, Golden Years, Heroes, Fashion, Under Pressure, Let's Dance, China Girl, Modern Love. I mean, it's got everything, right? So yeah.
I didn't hear you mention I'm Afraid of Americans.
It's there too. Yeah, it's
all right.
There. Yeah, it's there.
Good.
It's there. Yep. Yeah. So that's.
It better be there.
Yeah, it's great. I'm not sure if it's the. Is it? Yeah, that's the one that he did with Trent Reznor, right?
Yes.
Classic. I thought there's multiple versions of that song, but maybe there's just the one.
No, there's multiple versions. There's quite a few. I think there's 5 different versions, but the one with Trent Reznor is the one that everybody loves.
Okay, so this one says "I'm Afraid of Americans." V1.
That's the one.
Version 1. Okay, perfect. It's a great one. Okay, my number 4 is going to be Kiss Double Platinum. I don't have it on me, but this was a big record when I was a kid, and it was basically, I think at that time it was the first Kiss Greatest Hits record. It came out in the late 70s, I think. Let me see here. Yeah, came out in 78. So it basically encapsulated their prime period there. And what's good about this record is that there's a lot of remixes that I actually like better. I think the Kiss had a rough start with producers for their first couple of records, maybe the first 3 records, where the production's really muddy and murky, especially on Hotter Than Hell. That album is hard to listen to, even though it's probably one of their greatest records. The production's really bad. And yeah, I was just getting into Kiss for the first time, and yeah, Kiss was like 70s Kiss is just amazing. I love 70s Kiss. I love 80s Kiss too, but 70s Kiss is untouchable, except for those murky productions on the first few records. But yeah, so Kiss Double Platinum, that's my number 4. Number 3, This is tricky. I'm gonna go with Motley Crue's Decade of Decadence, 81 to 91. Uh, this album,
Joyce.
yeah, this album was it basically picked the best two record or the best two songs from each record. So it was Too Fast for Love, Shout at the Devil, Theater of Pain, Girls, 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 and Dr. Feelgood. So there's 10 songs there from those five records. And they basically just picked the two best songs from each record, and I agree with their picks. They're all amazing songs. And they also had five new songs. Teaser, Rock and Roll Junkie, Primal Scream, which I love. And
Primal Scream, I think, is the best Motley Crue song ever made.
Killer. Yeah.
Maybe Dr. Feelgood right up there, but man, Primal Scream is intense.
It's so good. Yeah, it's so good. And then there's Anarchy in the UK. I mean, didn't really have to put that one on, but yeah, just a great album cover. Just a great, like at this point, like Motley Crue could do no wrong. They hadn't screwed up, This was before grunge took over, so they were still cool in '91, right? So yeah, this album was just like everyone had it. I had it. My friends had it. We all had it. We all loved it. And yeah, I mean, if anything, there are some weak album tracks on some of the earlier Crue records. And yeah, not a dud on this one. Okay, now number two, I'm gonna go with Elvis. 30 number ones.
Wow.
Yeah, this came out in 2002. And there was a follow-up record that came out in 2003 called Second to None, which is basically another 30 classic Elvis tunes. So for me, this is essential because Elvis had, released most of his songs as singles, right, in the 50s. This was just an updated collection, 30 songs, right? It's awesome. I mean, you can't go wrong with Elvis. I think this is the ultimate Elvis collection. Okay, and my number one, you actually mentioned this at the beginning of the podcast, and this was probably the first major greatest hits album that I bought. I had the tape originally, but I had to buy the CD. The Rolling Stones, Hot Rocks.
Wow.
Yeah, this is my ultimate favorite greatest hits package. For the same reasons, I think. A lot of these were singles. But yeah, just this is from 1964 to 1971. Which is perfect because I started, most Stones fans started to buy the records with Let It Bleed and Beggar's Banquet. And so this kind of covers the early period. So it's perfect. It also had a follow-up. It was called Suitably Enough, More Hot Rocks. HMV import. Wow, must have been expensive when I bought it. So yeah, a great collection. These two go really well together. And yeah, they're double CDs. Yeah, so that's yeah. And my honorable mentions. I don't want to steal your thunder, but I would say Duran Duran, and I would also say Neil Young's Decade was one of my favorite greatest hits packages that came out in the late '70s. I think it was a triple record collection, but it was shrink down to two CDs. Yeah. So there you have it.
I'm going to also have to add one honorable mention. And I got to say, I left it off my list only because technically I don't really find it a true greatest hits because it divvies a band's career into decades. But U2's best of 1980 to 1990 and 1990 to 2000. So that band had, I think everyone would say that the 80s is where it was at. The 90s, things got a bit dancier. I personally love U2 90s output, not so much for some of the other fans out there. And the casual fan, I would definitely say, would much prefer Sunday Bloody Sunday over Lemon. Yeah. But I think that's a great way to, if they were to have one greatest hits package from, at say in the year 2001 from their whole career, having Lemon next to Sunday Bloody Sunday on an album to me doesn't fit as well. It'd be great for me, but the point of a greatest hits is to sell more records. You want people to get into a band and buy more after that point.